Morgan, you've lived in the Appalachian Mountains your entire life. What is the weirdest thing you have ever seen with your own eyes? That is a fantastic question, and I would love to tell you. Hello, my name is Morgan. I am from Southwest Virginia in just the smack dab middle of the Appalachian Mountains. I grew up on a very, very haunted farm. So, one thing about me is I am that friend that is going to make you do weird stuff. So, at some point, while being my friend, you will end up on my family's farm outside with the projector shining on the side of the barn where I show you the scariest movie I can think of that takes place on a farm. So this actually took place during one of those excursions. We had to finish up the movie, everyone was on edge and just wanting to go home, and me too. It scares me too, I'm not immune to being scared, so I was also packing up kind of quickly. Well, we had borrowed one of my parents' fold-out tables because we had done a little grilling, so we put all of the hamburgers and stuff on this white fold-out table, and my mom was like, hey, whenever you're done, just fold it back up and set it inside the barn, and I was like, gotcha. So I've folded this table back up, I'm walking back over to the entrance of the barn, and everyone else is still to the side of the barn. I open up the barn door, and I slide the table in. It's very dark in the barn, but I see someone standing in the barn. It was an older woman. She was scowling at me. I very much recall what she was wearing, down to a T. I know what her face looked like. She was not happy to see me. I could tell she wasn't a physical person because she was a little bit translucent. So I back out of the barn, I'm like, so sorry, turn around, go back to the car. Once we're out of the holler where that farm is, I tell everyone what I saw in the barn, and everyone's like, no. So a little bit of time passes, I go back out to that farm, I'm at my parents' house, and I'm casually telling my mom and dad what happened, what I saw in the barn. And as I'm describing this woman, my dad just silently stands up and leaves the room, and I'm like, okay. So he comes back in with this picture, and he just puts it down in front of me. And it is of the woman. It is the woman. And I said, that's her. That's her. Who is that? And he was like, that's your great-grandmother. I don't recall ever seeing a picture of her in my life. But that was her in the barn. And it's not that she was creepy. I'm not calling my great-grandmother creepy. It's just creepy that it got confirmed. It's always creepy when something is confirmed. You know what I mean? Because I would love to think I'm just always hallucinating. My eyes are always playing tricks on me. But when something's confirmed like that, it's creepy. It's creepy. I don't like it.
I'm just on a walk with Harvey, and I thought I'd do a story time. Ella and I recently just did a ghost tour, and it got me thinking. I remember when I was 12, I was at my friend's house having a sleepover, and now her house was old. It was on acreage. It was kind of it was a farmhouse, and we were in her room. We were drawing, and we heard 3 knocks on the door, and we were like, oh, come in. No one came in. So my friend went to the door to see who was there. Her parents were both asleep, snoring in bed. Her siblings were on the other side of the house. They were all asleep as well. Now, we didn't think anything of it. We just went to bed, and I got woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning to the dad leaving for work. I heard the front door slam, and then I heard his car drive off on the gravel. Anyways, I was trying to get back to sleep, and I was opening and closing my eyes, just trying to fall back asleep. And I opened my eyes, I kid you not, in the corner of the room, there is this black figure just standing there. And I was like, nah. I was rubbing my eyes. I was like, no, I'm definitely awake. I was definitely awake for this. And I was like, nah. Every time I opened and closed my eyes, it got closer and closer. I am kicking my friend because we were sleeping head to toe. I've done a full 180 in the bed and gone up to her head. I am crying. Look, I never stayed there again. Ever. I was petrified. And that is how I believe in ghosts. I believe in it. Now, look, some of you are going to be like, oh, it could have been a jacket or something making it look no, tell me why it was moving. It was full moving closer. It was not it.
Dan Aykroyd refers to this town as the most haunted place on Earth. Welcome to my series, Haunted US, where we are going to be exploring the ghost stories and cryptids of every state out here in the United States. Currently, we are focusing on Connecticut. If you're from Connecticut, you probably know about Dudley Town, the Dark Entry Forest. Dudley Town is an abandoned settlement that was made in the 1740s. It is a section of Cornwall that many members of the Dudley family lived in, which is how it earned its name. It was finally abandoned in the early 20th century when the iron industry story ended up winding down. Now let's explore the hauntings of this abandoned settlement, or should I say, the curse. This town was allegedly founded by the descendants of Edmund Dudley, who was executed for treason by Henry VII, which is supposedly where the curse comes from. They say that this curse is what caused crops to fail, as well as mental illness, very violent deaths, murder, and people taking their own life. In the 1920s, this land was purchased by Dark Entry Forest Association. It is now very heavily guarded, which has made people very suspicious about what is going on in there and what has gone on in there. Hikers who explore the area do report seeing orbs, complete absence of wildlife, and report feeling like the forest is watching them, as well as an unnerving, complete silence. Some even believe that there may be an energy vortex in the town. There are missing person cases from the area that are heavily redacted, causing people to be even more suspicious about what is going on in Dudley Town. What do you think? Is Dudley Town truly haunted? Or is all of the secrecy of the town causing rumors that may be untrue? If you enjoy these stories, make sure to let me know by following, liking, and saving for later. And be sure to comment below what you think and what state you want to see next.
So they call it the Bennington Triangle, a place where the forest swallows people whole. Hikers go in, locals disappear. Even experienced outdoorsmen disappear without a trace. Some say the mountain is alive. Others say it's something far worse. The natives even believe that there was a kind of monster that lived in the ground in the mountain. It would kind of come out like a boulder and then swallow people whole. They warned people not to build things on the mountain, not to hang out on the mountain too much. And still, colonizers decided that they were going to put a whole logging town on Glastonbury Mountain. People still hike there today. Experienced hikers get unbelievably disoriented. Some of them have gone in and never come back out. Some bodies never even found. Would you spend the night in the Bennington Triangle? Would you camp on Glastonbury Mountain if somebody double dog dared you to? Would you go for a hike? They say not to wear red in the Appalachian Mountains. The Green Mountains are part of the Appalachian Mountains. Glastonbury Mountain is part of the Green Mountains. Would you go hiking wearing red? People who say that they saw Paula Weldon on the day that she went missing when she went hiking on Glastonbury Mountain. They say she was wearing a red jacket. Do you think that had something to do with why she went missing? Do you think that made her a target? What do you think? Let me know. And if you like talking about scary things like this, I host the Spooky Speakeasy at 10:30 p.m. Eastern every night here on TikTok Live. Come hang out, come hear some scary stories, come share some of your own. Love to see you there. All right, bye.
This story was sent to us by someone who we're just going to call Joe. Joe said this happened back in 2007. At this point, it's been 19 years. I still have no explanation for it, and it's still one of the weirdest things that has ever happened to me, and I think about it to this day. Joe said that at the time that this story takes place, she is 17 years old. She has grown up in a rural town. She said it is not near the coast, so no big water access, but they do have a river that does run through the town. She said that during the summertime, a lot of kids would get together and they would float this river. She said it was not a fast-moving river, it was not a deep river. Most of the time during summer, the river was about knee-deep. Now, she said something important to note about this river is that there were no public access points. This was not a busy area, and in order to get into the river in most spots, it would be a very high embankment. So you would either have to jump down or climb down, and then to get back onto land, you would have to climb as well. There were certain points where you could easily access this river where it didn't have those high embankments, but all of the land was privately owned, and in order to get to those, you would have to have permission from the landowner, or if one of your friends owned one of the farms and they were going with you, then you could use their access point. And to get to this river was not just a pull up and get to the river. It was long drives down long farm paths to get to this river, lined by privately owned land, heavily wooded. One day, Joe and about 6 of her friends decide that they're going to float the river. They get permission from this landowner with a good access point to the river, and they drive all the way back to the river, get their boat, and they start floating the river. They are floating along. They're having a great time. About 2 hours into this float trip, they reach this one area where there's like this little pull-off and a pond. You can't go up onto the land easily. There's no beach or anything like that, but the water is very calm, and it's kind of somewhere where you can stop and swim. Joe says, I had grown up in this place. I knew where I was on this river. I knew who owned the land. I knew if it was easily accessible. I knew if it was remote. And she said where this place was, super duper remote. This is not somewhere where somebody's just going to walk up and sit along the bank of the river. But as they're floating up to this point, she says she looks in the trees. And she says that it's kind of like behind a line of trees. She says, I see a woman sitting on the bank of the river. And we make eye contact. And she waves at me. And I'm thinking, that's weird. What are you doing here? Said, it's a small town. I didn't recognize her. And this place, very remote and privately owned. Maybe it's the family member of the guy who owns this farm. Maybe she's taking an ATV back here. I don't know, whatever. So she waves back. Turns around to say to her friend, do you see that woman sitting on the bank of the river? Says that to her friend. They both look. Woman's gone. Vanished like she was never even there. Joe says that immediately she gets a sense of impending doom. Something is wrong. Something is not right. She doesn't know. But they pull their boats off into this little swimming hole. She looks at her friends and she says, there was a woman up there. I'm going to go up there and check it out. Her friends say, you can't do that because that's trespassing. The guy who owns this land did not give us permission to go up there. And she says, I don't care. Something is wrong. I'm going up there. Joe says it takes her a minute, but she and two of her friends do end up being able to climb this embankment, and they pull themselves up and they kind of look around. They don't see anything. Joe is telling her friends, no, I am telling you, there was a woman sitting on this bank. We waved at each other. We made eye contact. I saw her clear as day. She was here, was sitting right here. She walks over to the place where she thinks that she saw her. Nothing. She looks down. She sees something shiny that doesn't look like it should be there. And she leans down. She picks it up, and it's this necklace. She said it wasn't like expensive. It wasn't like a diamond necklace or anything. It was just out of place. Joe shows this piece of jewelry to her friends. They're like, that's weird. Strange. This is where you saw the woman. She's like, yeah, this is where I saw her. Well, this gets Joe to kind of look around a little harder. She's convinced like this woman is here. Maybe she needs help. I don't know. She glances over and she notices that there's this pile of brush. It looks like something's been like piled up. So she goes over and she starts moving this brush away, and she says that she sees a foot, and the toenails are painted, so it's a woman's foot. Joe says she immediately gets this sinking feeling. She tells her friend, give me your towel, because her friend had tied a towel around her when they climbed up. And she started to kind of dig a little more, and she ends up seeing like, yeah, this is definitely a woman here. Anything that she's exposed, she covers up with a towel. Now remember, it's 07, but we did have cell phones. It was the Stone Ages, but we did have cell phones. They did have cell service, so they ended up immediately calling authorities. They tell them where they are. The authorities come out, and indeed it is a woman's unalived remains. The officers who come out do end up asking the kids some questions. They're really not of any help. They don't know anything. All they've done is just found this woman, so they end up helping them get home safely. She says that it does take some time, but she does find out who the woman is. She's actually a resident from 3 states away. Her vehicle had been found 2 counties over. No one in the county where her vehicle was found knows her. No one in the county where her remains were found knows her. Looking into this woman a little bit more, it turns out she had an active life in that state that was 3 states away from where they were. A missing persons report had been filed. Once Joe finds out who this woman is, she is able to find a photo of her, looks at the photo, and realizes that that was the woman who was sitting on the bank that waved at her when they were floating the river that day, which prompted her to go up onto the shore and look around. Joe said in her email that they did do an autopsy, but could not find any cause of what had happened to this woman. There was no trauma. Her remains were not badly decomposed. She did, however, find water in her lungs, so what they thought was that she fell into the river and then her remains were carried to that spot. Joe says that it's been 19 years and she doesn't buy it. She said, I don't buy it because the way that she found her, she said that she was covered with brush and sticks and things like that. It looked intentional, whereas nothing else around her was disturbed. Now, while this river is low in the summer, she says, yes, in wintertime, it is much higher, and it, that's why those banks look the way that they do, why they're carved out and they're so steep in the summer. She said, but if she had been there since winter and we hadn't had a flood or anything, how would her body not be badly decomposed? She said, I just have a lot of questions and I don't buy it. Whatever happened to this woman, she said it was never solved, ever. It was ruled as accidental. But as I said before, Joe says, I just don't buy that. Where Joe lived was just very remote, very rural. It's not, people don't pass through there. She said it is not a pass-through town. It's not a tourist trap. It's not anything that anybody is just gonna drive through. To get there, you have to intentionally want to be there. Joe says that's definitely the woman that I saw sitting on the bank that day, the woman that was found, the body and remains that she did find. So that was her. That was definitely her. I know it. I saw her clear as day. We waved. We made eye contact. That it was a terrible situation, but she's happy that she found her and could give her family some peace and she could be laid to rest. As the years have gone on, Joe says that that is not the only body to be found in that river or along that river. As these bodies pile up, they're consistently ruled accidental, and that is what it is. Joe says that she has since moved away from that town. Her family does still live there, so she will go back to visit from time to time, but she doesn't live there anymore. Joe, thank you so much for that story. That's wild. I don't know. With the story, I did leave out some details. I did change names. I tried to not mention any locations or be specific, only because the woman who Joe found in 2007 still has family, and I just want to be respectful to them, just in case they come across this story. Not like I'm anybody, I ain't shit, but you know what I mean. I just want to protect their anonymity and just be as respectful as I possibly can. Thank you all for bearing with me. So remember that last video where I said that I was sick? I was like really, 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 really sick. I had like a really bad respiratory thing. I am finally, over the last 10 days, feeling like myself again. It was bad, you guys. So I am sorry. I had to reorganize our lives when I was finally feeling like myself. And then my kid had spring break, and I don't do this in front of him because he has really bad nightmares. So that's just like a personal boundary. And I was like getting anxiety. I was like, I haven't posted anything. And I was like, you know what? Everybody realizes that we're just normal people and shit happens. Like, it's all good. Yeah, I was really sick. The dizziness that I had dealt with, and then the respiratory thing, that it all tied together. It was a whole thing. It was awful. But I'm finally back to normal, so thanks for bearing with me, and yeah, I'll see you later.
Spooky story time about Estill County / Irvin. Irvin, Kentucky is what I'm talking about, and I had just vended the Mountain Mushroom Festival. And I stayed the night there for a couple nights, and I had a very interesting experience, and it's very cool, actually. As you know me, some of you may know that I am no stranger to spooky activity. It is just part of me and part of my life experience. So let me tell you what happened. So I was there at night, and I just started noticing the activity everywhere. I started seeing shadow figures, and there was tons and tons of them. Some of them were Civil War soldiers, and some were old mountain healer type ladies, and they were all around me, and they were just around me at night. And I felt very protected around them. They actually made me feel, though they were ghosts, I guess, they kept telling me that they were related to me, and that I didn't have anything to worry about, and that I was safe and nobody was going to mess with me at night. So I do have family from Eastern Kentucky. I didn't think that I had any family from Estill County that I knew of, at the time. And, I actually was thinking, gosh, I got to go to bed. So I even kind of said out loud, like, y'all are a little intense. I have got to go to sleep. I've got to get up in the morning. So this is cool. Been nice knowing you. Got to go to bed. So about 2 minutes before my alarm goes off, I feel someone it's almost like someone sat down on the corner of my bed and nudged my shoulder and said, it's time to get up. It was a man, and he looked like a Civil War soldier. And I looked at the clock, and it was 2 minutes before my alarm went off, was to go off. And I was like, wow, this thing touched me, right? So I kind of have this strange feeling all day or whatever. I go home and I tell my mom about it. And she says, well, yeah, you do have family there. And I was like, what? So we looked up our family last names, and it confirmed that they were from there. She already knew that, though. And what was interesting is where I was very, very close to the cemetery that where my family members were buried. I was about, 100 yards away from where their burials were, come to find out. And one more little fun bit I wanted to add that just kind of adds to the story is the next morning, I noticed that there were just out of nowhere, I'd never noticed it, there was like Estill County Museum, and I was like, and it was before they were open early, and it was before, and so I was like, I gotta walk in there for some reason. I have to go in there. I don't know what kind of museum this is, but I need to go in there. I walk in, and it's mostly genealogy. Like, it looked like they had a bunch of genealogy books laid out. And the lady in there said, hey, go in the other room and check the room out. And it was just full of Civil War memorabilia. And I just got this feeling that, like, I was connected to this stuff somehow, too. And I was like, no. And I didn't even look at the book. I was like, you're just being weird. Like, I don't even know. But it was like something told me to go in there and, like, look. And I didn't actually see any of their names or read anything, but I just got this feeling in there. And that was before I knew, so it was just very interesting.
So it's one thing when you see something scary, but it's a whole other when that scary thing talks to you. And with that being said, let's jump right into tonight's story. So grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary story that happened in Appalachia. Because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story comes from Abby. I had just finished watching your latest Tea After Midnight episode and your story of you and Eva encountering something that is insanely scary. As you said, the stories you get sent don't have to be about the Appalachian Mountains, but mine does take place in them. I'm Abby, but I'm not going to expose my friend's name in this story for their personal privacy, but I'd love if you shared this story. So I would like to start my story by sharing the setting. This story happened in 2023 and takes place in the Appalachian Mountains. One night I'm laying in bed, staying up late, binge watching a show. It's about 2 a.m. and my dog is sound asleep at the end of my bed. My lights are off and I'm on my phone watching the show when I hear someone whisper my name, Abby, with a faint small scratch following off the outside of my door onto the hallway walls. As dumb as I can be, I respond going, Mom, or Bella, my sister, but that isn't her real name. I open my door to see everyone is asleep and no one is in the hallway. I get intense chills but later brush it off. I decided to go to sleep, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. And mind you, my bed is beside the only window in my room, which is very large, and I didn't have good curtains at the time. Then my dog, who was laying so still at the edge of my full-size bed and sleeping quietly, jumps up faster than the speed of light. For a little foreshadowing of my dog's future actions, this dog is a rescue and is very gentle. And if he saw a ladybug, he would just stare, careless to eat it like others. Now when my dog is standing up, he is in a very still position, just standing, but he is growling directly at my window. I don't want to look at my window at all, so I'm about to pet my dog to see if he's okay, when he sits up in perfect posture and just starts panting. He slowly turns his head directly at me, something straight out of a horror movie. I can tell he is very aggressive in the moment, which is new to me, so I slowly start to back up. When he jumps at me, he grabs my arm and he bites really hard. I'm screaming for him to stop, but he is pulling and eventually breaks the skin. I break free and run to my door, slamming it on him as he claws aggressively at my door. I run to my dad's room holding my arm. I wake my dad up and show him my arm, and he runs downstairs fast. He goes outside to look at my window and sees no one. Then he walks to my room to open my door. He sees my bed made and my dog sleeping peacefully at the edge of my bed. No scratch marks on my door, and I know I didn't dream this because the bite marks remained bleeding on my arm. So I wrap up my arm and sleep on the couch instead. I still don't know what possessed or happened to my dog. But I had told one of my friends this story, and she asked to see a picture of my dog before the incident and after. She's someone who works with seeing animals' signs of aggression and said something has changed in him, but it wasn't good. It's been 3 years, and he's not done anything like that again, but that day will stick with me forever. I'm so sorry that the story was so long, but I have another with the same settings in the beginning. This starts in 2023 in the Appalachian Mountains when I'm in my basement with one of my friends. My basement is very big and we had a gym, which me and my friend were in with lots of storage and random rooms around us. My friend and I were playing around and got thirsty, so we went to the random fridge to get Gatorade. That's when my friend drops her drink and she looks like she had just seen a ghost. I look back and see nothing there where she was looking. She grabs my hand and we run upstairs, and she starts sobbing and saying there was a tall man, faceless, singing a song to her with the words, "Come on now, the world will end, you will survive, we have no time." At first I thought she was making this up, so I didn't really care or anything, which was kind of rude of me, but she didn't come back for a while. Then another friend who I never told this story to, and she didn't know my friend, we both never mentioned what happened to anyone. We were both in my basement, and she says she's seen a man behind the firewood pile out of the window singing a song, and I said, "What song?" She then copied the exact words as the first friend did. "Come on now, the world will end, you will survive, we have no time." Again, I thought they somehow knew each other, even though one of my friends was from school and the other was from camp. I was really skeptical it might have been some sick joke, but this happened with 8 different people who I've never mentioned the story to. The same man, different place in or around my basement, and same song. This man was said to be tall and bone-like. He has no face, but only a hat and a suit. I'm genuinely terrified about this happening after about 10 more times being in the basement with different people and the same stuff continuing to happen. Until 2 years later, I'm walking in the fields with one of my friends who has seen this man. There's a cabin in these fields which I'm aware of, and the whole field is covered in snow. So I'm walking around the cabin when I see footprints of classy boots going into the cabin, which is trashed and abandoned. Well, my friend starts running without saying anything, and I'm like, "Oh shoot," so I start running after her, and she eventually stops, and I sit down and go, "What?" She then said, "He was right behind you, but he crawled into the creek when you ran." And let me tell you, right then and there, I burst out crying, bawling my eyes out, because what? So then I stand up, and looking back, I see footprints and handprints leading to the creek. So we ran back to my house and made hot chocolate and didn't want to talk about it. And I had still never seen this man. About a year or 2 later, comes to now, today. I'm sitting on the porch with my dad talking about my upcoming birthday, and it's very late and dark outside. That's when my dad stands up, freaking out, saying he heard someone running in the woods right beside us, saying, "Come on now, the world will end. You will survive. We have no time," in a breathless voice. The very first time I've seen the man. I truly don't know what to do or who he is or if he's real, but I'm horrified. That's my story for you, and I'd love to hear your response to this if you're comfortable. But thank you for letting me share, and I wish I could be making these up, but I'm horrified and clueless of what to do right now. Abby, that is absolutely terrifying. But I want to jump back to the beginning where you're talking about your dog being on the bed and is a very gentle dog normally, but you're laying there and you hear something whisper your name, then you hear this scratching from your door following onto the wall in the hallway. That is so scary. But your dog being normally gentle, they're sitting up in an upright, position, looking at the window, growling. But then they look at you, and they attack you. They jump at you and attack you when this dog is normally very gentle. That is so strange to me. So I don't know why that happened. Very scary. And then your dad to come down there and check outside and there's nothing there. But when you come back to the room, your bed's made up. The dog's sleeping peacefully like nothing ever happened. But your arm is still bleeding. But now let's address the man that not only you, but your other friends on different occasions, different people, saw the exact same thing and heard the same song that he sang. I don't know what these lyrics are. Come on now, the world will end. You will survive. We have no time. If anybody in the comments knows what this means, what it's talking about, please enlighten all of us because I'm at a loss. To me, I truthfully don't know what this is, what this being or entity could be. But then also you're outside in the field and it's snowy so you can kind of see the footprints and everything. Your friend starts running, so you start running, and then when you find out what she saw, you literally see the footprints and the handprints leading down to the creek. That is terrifying. I've got chills right now. So if any of you watching have had a similar experience to Abby, please let us know in the comments. I truly don't know what this is, so if you guys have any idea, please let us know. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them, and they do not have to be about the Appalachian Mountains. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the best night. I love you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Broughton Hospital in Morganton, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville, is considered one of the most haunted buildings in the state of North Carolina. It's been in continuous operation since it's opened in 1883. It opened as the Western North Carolina Insane Asylum. It changed its name over to the State Hospital at Morganton for a while. And then in the 50s, it finally became Broughton Hospital. It was named after a governor at the time. But it's been in continuous operation since 1883. And, you know, back when practices in the industry were evolving, we'll just say that. Lobotomies were still a thing. Insulin shock therapy, electroshock therapy, ice baths, all that stuff, you know, was considered cutting edge treatment at those times. So it's all happened within these walls. Now, one of the more famous incidents that happened at Broughton was in the 60s. It was April 12th of 62. There were a set of twins, the Eller twins. They were female, 31 years old. They both had schizophrenia. And they were always together. You couldn't separate them. Well, they did. They separated and put them on different wards, and they both passed away that night. Like within hours of being separated, they both passed away. And here's the thing. They did, of course, full autopsies, toxicology reports, and only 31 years old wouldn't. Let's just say, till this day, it's still unknown cause what really happened. Now, the theory is that they willed that to happen, that they just could not stand to be apart. That's one of the more famous incidents at Broughton, but probably the most famous incident happened between a doctor and a nurse who were having an extramarital affair. Well, this carried over into the office, and they locked themselves into the nurse's office, nurse's station, and it ended as horribly as it possibly could have. Neither one of them walked back out of that nurse's station. And to this day, in that administrative part of the building, apparitions, full-body apparitions of like a doctor in a lab coat or a nurse in a nurse's uniform are reported. Heated voices, like arguments, are reported. Now, one of the more famous hauntings at Broughton is an elevator that's supposed to basically operate entirely autonomously, like it has a mind of its own. And not only that, you're likely to see a spectral lady wearing fuzzy pink slippers. You can't even make this kind of stuff up. It's been reported, like, by so many people that you can't even, you can't look past it anymore. But Broughton's got the whole works. I mean, disembodied voices in buildings that they don't even use anymore. The police have had to come because they hear screams and stuff. So the police are called to investigate. Of course, they find nothing. EVPs, cold spots, the whole works. Now, if that wasn't creepy enough for you, there is a whole network of underground tunnels underneath Broughton. And from the best I can gather, they were used to transport people during wartime for like a safe way. Anyway, like basically like a bomb shelter, an underground place to transport people. Everything was bomb-proof back then, but that's Broughton for you. I just could not have an Appalachian Ghost Stories channel and not tell you guys about Broughton. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Keep sending me those stories and suggestions. Message me, mail me. I don't care. I'll just be tickled to hear from you. And keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.
Hello, TikTok friends and family. On the spiritual level and the paranormal level, I need some assessment here. I was working on work stuff in the bedroom because I don't have enough time to do it at work. So you bring that kind of stuff home, get it done, take it back. No rush, no frustration or stress. Right, okay. I'm sitting there in bed putting these menus and recipes together, and all of a sudden I hear somebody say, I thought they said something before it, but I heard knock, knock. I got the video. It sounds like my dad. It really does. You can't, my dad's not here anymore. You can't mistake that voice for missing somebody. Like, you just know when you hear that voice, right? But here's the thing. I also know about the folk lore for the Appalachian Mountains. Like, you hear knock knock, you don't answer. I wasn't thinking, I was busy. I said hello. I got up, checked it out. My doors were locked. Nobody else is in my house for the exception of my son sleeping in his room. Now, in the video, it's right at the beginning because I've been playing movies all morning working on these damn menus and recipes. But it caught my attention because it was completely different. So, any ideas? Help me out here. Help a girl out here. Because now I already had plans to move my room around again. Odd. Before this started happening. But I'm going to cleanse and sage out the house again. So, let me know. Hello? And I hope y'all have a great Sunday afternoon, because it is beautiful outside.
Why don't we see ghosts, sea monsters, supernatural creatures nearly as much as we used to? A lot of people talk about its modern day technology, okay? EMF fields and electronic waves that are given off by power lines, GPS devices, our very own cell phones that we carry in our pocket, radio towers, etc., okay? Imagine this, hundreds of years ago, people talked about spirits and ghosts and specters as part of everyday life, okay? We might not see them as much anymore because there's power lines lining all of our roads. There's electricity in all of our houses. We all personally, even when they're in the woods, we carry cell phones and other electronic devices that would be off-putting to these things, okay? If you want to see real-life examples of this, the best way to deter a shark is to put a magnet in your swimsuit, okay? Because the electromagnetic fields mess with its navigational system, okay, in its head. We know this is the fact for birds. When they put up new radio towers in certain areas, we'll see birds' migration patterns get messed up or them all crash into the side of a building. You know, whales, dolphins, etc. use this. So imagine a giant sea creature using this. You see these old paintings of sea creatures destroying boats and damaging ships. But that was when they were made out of wood and they had nothing given off. Now, every boat, even a small boat, has, gasoline engines and electric, GPSs and, all these different gears and mechanisms and fuses. Plus, you on the boat have radios and cell phones. There's a lot of stuff that would be off-putting, okay? One of the hardest reasons why it is to find some whales sometimes is because the sonar that we send will actually drive them away. It's probably the same thing for these big creatures. Going to ghosts and stuff. Native American tribes used to talk about how, where they had settled, there would be their spirit guardians would come through the same trail every so often, and they would have these festivals and celebrations for it. And then the government would come in and put a row of power lines, and then boom, it all stopped. They never see them anymore. They'd never see them on that path. This is what's led to what's called containment theory, where they think that we might have set up the national parks where we did on purpose as maybe a part of agreement if there's cryptid creatures out there such as werewolves or vampires to give them a hunting area where they can be undisturbed by all the electronic pulses in the air. That's why they're not allowed to build certain things out there. It's actually a really cool theory if you want to look into it. Because, technically everywhere should have been a national park. So why do they section off certain areas? A lot of people say it's landmarks and things. There's a lot of national parks or state parks with no really big landmarks or features of any kind. People talk about portals being in these national parks and state parks. Portals might have been a natural occurring thing everywhere, but they can't manifest around areas where there's power lines. If you watch ghost hunting shows, the first thing they do is turn off all the electronics in order to try to see the ghost. Okay. So there might be something to that of, trying to power everything down. I think there's a reason why you hear about Appalachia and all these places having more ghost experiences than anywhere else. And it's because they have the least amount of electronics. You talk about all these different crazy cryptid creature stories you hear about in these third world countries. Guess what they have the least of? Electronics and cell phones and radios and all this other, stuff that would be a mega deterrent. All right. A lot of people say, well, what about Bigfoot and things like that? There's tons of land creatures and mammals that can see electronic fields and magnetic waves. Foxes, for example, are one of the only creatures that hunt using magnetic pulses. Okay, it's actually one of the ways that they catch their prey. It's a really neat thing. When foxes are facing true north, they can actually see better. Weird fact for you about foxes. Okay, this would also make sense around limestone deposits and granite, why you have more ghost stories and more spooky things happening, because limestone and granite is a natural deterrent for electronics. That's why if you take a compass and go stand over a limestone deposit, the compass will start spinning out of control because it's confused. It doesn't know what's going on. Okay. Those things are like a natural barrier. All right. If you really want to get into a weird rabbit hole, look up lead paint. We'll go down another hole about that. They always tell you that lead paint's bad for kids and bad for you. That's why they stopped making lead paint houses. I don't think that's the case, because what do they put on you when you take an x-ray? You put on a lead vest. It blocks the radiation. Is there something that our government is wanting us to get more radiation? Is this their way of kind of killing us off quicker? Who knows? But if you guys want to go to that red paint theory or the lead paint theory, we'll do that in the next deep dive. If you all enjoyed this, this will be a snippet of a much longer video on Matt from Nomads, our Spotify and Apple podcast, and our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called Matt from Nomads.
So listen to me.
Hey, this is Nightly Haven. I'm your host, Nikki, and I'm standing right here in the woods of northeastern Pennsylvania, deep in the Appalachian Mountains, right in Lackawanna County. And I must say, I walked these woods as a kid, and they're definitely creepier when you get a little bit older. I think aging makes us chickens. And tonight, we're not just talking about stories. We're stepping directly into them, because these woods have legends. They have reports, and they have moments people can't quite explain. And most of them come from places just like this. So, I want you to take this journey with me. Stay with me as we go deeper into the mystery, the folklore, and the things people say move throughout these forests when no one is supposed to be watching. And if you're into the strange and the eerie and the unexplained, you're in the right place. If you like content like this, go ahead, like, subscribe, and share. But more importantly, just stay with me, because once we go deeper into these woods, you start to realize it doesn't always feel like you're alone. All right, let's get started. Fear tingles down your spine and hairs stand on end. Mysteries unknown and tales in the dark. Are you ready? Hello? There's a feeling you don't really talk about out loud if you live in Lackawanna County. It's not fear exactly, it's not even an anxiety. It's familiarity, mixed with the quiet suspicion that something about the woods behind your life doesn't behave the way it should. Most people call it imagination or nerves, which I'm feeling a little right now, or just being in the woods too long. But if you ever stood still out here long enough, really stood still, you know it's not just that. Because there are moments that happen sometimes. The woods go quiet in a way that doesn't feel natural. No birds, no insects, no wind moving through the branches. Luckily, we're hearing birds now. It's like the entire environment pauses, like something larger than sound itself has stepped in and told everything else to stop moving. In that silence, your brain does something interesting. It doesn't ask if you're safe. It asks what is close enough to notice you. That's the part people don't like admitting, because once you recognize that feeling, you start to notice how often it shows up in places like this. In Lackawanna County, the woods aren't just scenery, they're infrastructures. They wrap around neighborhoods, set behind schools. They never fully agreed to be contained by human development. And once you grow up around that kind of environment, you stop asking if something is out there, and you start asking if it's always been there. People outside the Appalachian region talk about forests like they're neutral. Just trees, just land, just geography. But the Appalachian system, especially around northeastern Pennsylvania, doesn't feel neutral. Once you spend enough time in it, it feels layered, like it has memory built into the terrain itself. And there's Indian burial grounds literally all over these forests. The Appalachian Mountains are among the oldest mountain formations in North America, which means they've existed through entirely different versions of this world. Civilizations have risen and disappeared while these ridges stayed in place, slowly eroding but never truly leaving. And locals here will tell you something that doesn't make it into textbooks. The woods, they feel occupied. Not by people, not by the obvious sense, but something harder to define. A presence that doesn't announce itself, doesn't leave consistent evidence, but still manages to make itself known through absence. Like silence that arrives too quickly, like movement that stops when you look directly at it, like strange sensation that the forest is not being observed by you, it's observing you back, which I'm feeling a little right now, I'm not gonna lie. Plus, I don't like bears. I like them, just not near me. The idea sounds dramatic until you realize how many people independently report the same thing. Not stories passed down from a single source, not internet folklore, separate people, separate years, same description. And that's when it stops being a story and starts becoming a pattern, which you know Nightly Haven loves. In rural parts of Lackawanna County, there are accounts that don't really fit neatly into categories like animal sightings or misidentification. They describe something large, upright, still in a way that feels intentional rather than frozen. People don't always agree on what it looks like, but they tend to agree on how it behaves. It doesn't run when noticed. It doesn't immediately disappear. It doesn't act like a deer or a bear reacting to human presence. Instead, it waits. There are accounts near areas outside Scranton describing figures standing between tree lines, partially obscured, sometimes for long enough that witnesses begin to question whether it's even real or just a distortion of the environment. Then, without warning, it steps back. Not fast, not panicked, just enough movement to break line of sight, and then it's gone. No sound, no running, no branches breaking, no indication of a direction of travel. That absence of trace is what unsettles people more than the sight itself, because anything natural leaves evidence. Even when it disappears, it leaves behind disturbance. This doesn't. Over time, locals developed a name for it without really agreeing to the name. They call it the Watcher, not because it follows, but because it appears to be doing exactly what the name implies, watching. The unsettling part isn't the idea of being seen, it's the possibility that it has been seen far longer than you have been aware of. So far, so good. This is where accounts shift from visual to auditory, because seeing something in the woods is one thing, hearing something respond to you is another. Reports in the region describe voices that appear at distance inconsistent with echo patterns, and I am breaking every Appalachian rule as we speak. Unintelligible speech that seems to originate from within the forest itself, and the most common detail is the most personal one. The voice sounds familiar, not generic, not ambiguous, familiar enough that the listener recognizes it immediately as someone they know. A friend, a parent, a sibling, sometimes even the sound of their own name being spoken in a tone they associate with trust. And the instinctive reaction is almost always the same: to respond, to step forward, to locate the source. But in every account where people resist that impulse, the voice eventually stops responding entirely, as if acknowledging that the interaction has failed. There's no follow-ups, no escalation, just silence returning all at once. And the people who experience it often describe the same lingering thought afterwards. Not "I heard something," but "something knew how I would respond," which is a very different kind of unsettling. Now, there are older stories in this region that don't get classified neatly into modern terminology, not because they're vague, but because they resist definition. People describe animals behaving incorrectly: a deer that does not react to sound, a figure that looks like an animal until it moves in a way that breaks expectations, a presence that appears to shift between states of form when viewed directly. And I know I'm in the daylight, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of freaking myself out. These accounts are often dismissed individually, but when placed together, they form a consistent category of something that does not remain stable in form. Folklore in broader Appalachian regions have historically labeled similar phenomena as shape-shifting entities, though modern interpretation vary widely and often avoid direct naming. What remains consistent in the behavior pattern: recognition of something alive, followed by recognition that is not behaving according to biological rules. And the most common reaction from witnesses is not confrontation, it's immediate withdrawal, because whatever it is, it does not feel like something that should be studied closely. And I'm not fool enough to try. Across various informal reports and local storytelling traditions, there is mention of what people refer to as the Lackawanna Haunted Trail. It is described not as a single path, but as a series of locations, 13 points across wooded regions where similar experiences repeatedly occur. These include sensations of being followed, sudden environmental silence, loss of directional awareness, and visual anomalies such as movement between trees that cannot be tracked consistently. And that's why I went deep, but I didn't go too deep. I could see the top of my house still, so I can make my way home. What makes these accounts notable is not any single location. It is repetition across separate environments that do not appear connected by geography beyond being part of the same regional forest system. 13 locations is also a detail that has become part of storytelling itself, though no official documentation confirms any structure or classification of these sites. Still, the number persists in oral accounts, and in folklore, repetition tends to matter more than verifying the truth. I think I woke up the dogs. At the end of all this, there is a simpler truth that sits underneath every story, every report, every strange account that comes from these woods. People don't just talk about what they saw, they talk about how it felt. Because even when nothing is visible, something about these places communicates presence. And whether that presence is natural, psychological, or something entirely depends on who you ask. But in Lackawanna County, most people don't ask. They just remember. And they don't go back into the woods alone at night unless they absolutely have to. Because once you felt what it's like to be washed out there, no one really forgets. Not fully. Not ever.